Welcome everyone to the Turn End podcast. We have a Monday night special. Um, you might be surprised to see my face. First time this season making my debut. And we've called in a recruit who's been a friend of the show as well for the past while, Ciaran Callan. Ciaran, how's things?
Not a bother, Stefan. Thanks very much for having me once again.
No problem at all. Full change on the Turn End podcast lineup tonight, just like the Orioles starting lineup as well. What
Yeah,
was your impressions of the starting lineup first of all?
five changes was a bit of a surprise, to be quite honest with you. A lot of people, a lot of comments that I got in the press box this evening was that, look, if you ain't broke it, don't fix it. But I suppose in Stephen's eyes, maybe that he was looking at the fact that a quick turnaround of 72 hours between the two games. And let's be honest about it, the game on Friday night was a very high intensity game because they were playing a side that was quite similar in terms of stature and style of play than that of Dundalk. So I think this game needed something a little bit different. So fresh legs was definitely needed. And with that, he brought in the five changes. I was actually quite looking forward to seeing how Cameron Elliott was going to perform up front. I thought that he's definitely something that is going to bring something a little bit different to the side. I think he adds a little bit something not similar to what we've seen with Patrick Hoban, but I think Dean's just after putting in a very funny comment there. So, but all in all, I think we're looking at it. Oh, the one thing I would say is that I think another idea that Stephen O'Donnell would have had this evening is that there's a lot of players that have been introduced to the squad this year that not necessarily have had quite the amount of taste of football that they would have liked. I know we're only about 3 games in, but the more exposure that these players are going to get when it comes to Premier Division football, because for a lot of them, they're coming in from either under 23 or at a different standard of football. They need to get used to the exposure of what this league is about. And to be quite honest with you, Shelbourne, that kind of side that you do need to kind of get used to, because Damien Duff's side, they're very much on the front foot. They're a very compact side. They're quite aggressive. And they're very kind of, they press very, very high. And I think that was a good introduction to the league for a lot of players this evening. So all in all, it was, while it wouldn't have been the most classic of matches, I think 90 plus 6 minutes when the game was over, then it became a classic. But all in all, Stefan, the result was exactly what they wanted. We got a very clinical performance on Friday night, but tonight we got a game which was completely different. We had to come from behind. We had to show a little bit of character and a little bit of doggedness against a very high pressing side, but a fantastic result. Look, 6 points. If you said you were going to get 6 points last Thursday evening, absolutely would snap the hand off you.
Yeah, look, I suppose there would have been a few fingers pointed if we hadn't have picked up the 3 points after making so many changes. But there was a lot of questions being asked about it. But then there was a few rumours going around that there was a virus that sort of rippled through the squad. Even maybe Louis Ainsley been up in hospital or so. But I don't know if those rumours were getting legs or not, or whatever. But usually there's some sort of truth in it. So look, maybe there's a reason behind so many changes. I was sort of thinking it would have been ideal for Ryan O'Kane to come back in, but maybe he's just, bringing him in here and there. So like I just felt myself that maybe there was probably too much pressure being put on himself. He's probably putting that pressure on himself after starting his career so well and everything else that goes with it. But look, it's no harm that he can come in then, and he was a different option for Stevie to come off the bench. I suppose just like you said with Elliott up top, he's energetic. He'd be a centre back's nightmare. He was running all over Paddy Barrett, and I suppose he was giving him headaches. He didn't stop even till the final whistle. He was running at the corners, and then he sort of, he collapsed at the final whistle. He was probably exhausted, but look, he's put in a tremendous shift. But at 1-1, I was delighted to see him staying on. I was thinking Hoban's coming on here, he's probably going to get whipped off here, but I was delighted to see Stevie going for it, and rightly so. Like, look, we're at home, we're playing Shells. But yeah, it was good to see some of the lads getting run outs, like Tulloch playing again straight away.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was very impressive. There was a few shouts for man of the match, but I think he was definitely top of my list for sure. Some of his runs, and even playing 1-2s and different
Mm-hmm.
things like that. And then obviously he's picked up the goal again. So, what'd you make of the first goal? It was pretty poor defending, wasn't it?
Yeah, Darley, he got the ball kind of nicked off him, and J.R. Wilson just broke free of the defense, and then it just seemed as if he had all the time in the world to place it. He was able to round the keeper, and then although there was defenders rushing back, he was able to put it past them. I think the changes in defense can be kind of they're the kind of questionable thing you always kind of want to settle back for in front of your goalkeeper. But obviously, if needs must, if Louis Ainsley's not feeling well, then Wazir Williams comes in with a big reputation coming in from Swansea. He has to see what a mettle he has, and I think there's just been maybe just those little moments of loss in communication between himself and Andy Boyle. That'll come in time, But the one thing that I did notice, particularly, you spoke about Paddy Barrett there, like in the first half, he was able to spot exactly where certain players were going to be for set pieces and for corner kicks. He knew, obviously, from his experience of playing with the likes of Andy Boyle and things like that, he knew where those players were going to stand and make their run. So he was able to kind of block out nullify the attack in that way. But there was a couple of deliveries from set pieces that were extremely poor this evening. We're not going to gloss over that in any way. There was once or twice where we didn't beat the first man. It is improving. We could see, though, that when we got the ball in quickly, and that there was that first kind of cross from Dara Leahy and from Archie Davies, particularly in the first and second half, they did cause problems. I think if we're kind of waiting for things to set up and you're kind of looking to, pitch that perfect ball, it gives the opposition time to get into position as well. So that's something that I think Stevie's going to have to look at, that little bit more quick and zip in terms of delivering set pieces and even delivering crosses into the area, so that it doesn't give the opposition time to settle and to get into places. Because the likes of Paddy Barrett, I mean, the first time that Andy Boyle got away from Paddy Barrett this evening was when Pat Holben was on the pitch, and it results in a goal. So, I mean, it's something that we kind of need to look at in terms of set piece play going forward. But the first goal was a poor concession. Then we had really kind of a bit of a wobble for the next little while. There was just kind of half chances for Shelbourne. It looked like they were going to maybe nick a second one. And then, Jake Moylan had forced an absolutely brilliant save out of Nathan Shepherd in the second half, an absolutely excellent dive and save. So, I mean, there is kind of still that little bit of frailty, a little bit of communication that needs to happen between the back four. But we have to say, look, we've got Dara Leahy coming back in as well. He's going to be an absolutely fantastic addition, as we know, at left back. He's solid. We know what we get with him. And Archie Davies is really coming into that right back position very, very well. So all in all, if you had said to me maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, was I confident in this side, I would have been kind of, there wasn't a lot of questions. But I think these boys are starting to grow in stature, and those 2 wins are going to be massive confidence boosts for them.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing that impressed me was Leahy's reaction after the concession of the goal. Like, look, he's enough experience, and he's 21's international and stuff like that. But still, like, to concede the goal so badly like that, you just be thinking, who could clear you? You're going back towards your own goals. You're in trouble. Like, but he's obviously not got a shirt either. You'd think he would have got a shirt that the man was coming on, but Wilson was on him like a light. He read it well, and he got away from him with pace. Like, he was one that sort of impressed me for them. I thought he was solid defensively, and then he got up and down the pitch. But he seemed like when he took around Shepherd, he seemed like he'd an age just to pick his spot. I think the 2 lads are trying to get back onto the line to try and hook one off the line, but I think he even scuffed the shot possibly to bobble in. Like, but it didn't look good at half time. Everything seemed to be a bit shaky. I don't think Williams got a bit of a baptismal of fire every time the ball came to him. I think he was just pretty much indecisive, and he nearly was too laid back. From what I could see of things, he was waiting. He was waiting for things to happen, and then the Shell strikers were anticipating that and could sense he was a wee bit shaky.
Yeah.
I know he's coming into a new side and he's not played with any of the lads before, but sometimes you just have to go and win your header, and he sort of grew into it a little more in the second half. I would look, his distribution from the back was decent. I thought he could play out from the back, but just his decision making in the first half just left us very shaky, and we were unlucky not to concede it one or two more in the first half, I thought.
Yeah, you also have to remember he's coming from Swansea, where he's probably the majority of his football has been played at either underage or under 23. And Stefan, that the not necessarily the quality, but the competitiveness that would exist. The pace of the game is not what you're expected, over here. I'm not questioning, the quality of under 23s football in England, because we know that it's of a very high standard. But what we're talking about is that little bit of competitive edge that is expected to play at this level, where he came into a game tonight where he was playing against a very high pressing, aggressive side. I know I said that earlier on, but that's essentially what Shelbourne are. They play with kind of a wee bit of a chip on the shoulder, and that's something which he's going to have to get used to in this league, is that there's a lot of teams that will press really high on Dundalk because they know that they have to kind of fight fire with fire. Because the one thing I've noticed particularly from Stephen O'Donnell's sides in the past and now with Dundalk, is that they love a counter-attacking side. They like to play on the break. And that's something that is kind of trying to be counteracted with a high press. So that's something that these players that are coming into this, the three loanees and the new players that signings that have arrived in, they're all going to have to really kind of understand that that's the kind of the way that this game is played. And it's not the kind of standard that it used to exist maybe 10, 12 years ago. There's been a quantum leap in the game in this country. And you can only see with the quality of the teams that exist now in this league that, you've got your top 2 to 3, and then you've got this kind of middle bit where they're all vying, but the standard has completely jumped up. And I think it's a testament to the league, it's a testament to coaching, it's a testament to players. But these kind of, how would you say, these players that are coming in from England now realize that, it's not a stroll in the park anymore, and they're going to have to really play at a very high standard and a high tempo.
Yeah, look, totally get the whole standard thing. I don't know if I totally agree on that one, but I think it's a lot more competitive, honestly. There's no gimme three points no offense to the likes of Bray Wanderers, but they'd be coming to Oriel Park and we'd be saying, tick that off, as we've seen a couple of 7-1 wins and different things like that. But even the likes of tonight's results, Cork going to Tala on a Monday night and drawing 4-4 after being 4-2 up with about 5-10 minutes to go and different things like that. But I think the competitiveness, there's definitely, I think the lower teams have sort of closed the gap. We seen with UCD first game of the season, prime example coming, and I know they've scored a free kick, but look, they were full value for their draw in Oriel Park in the first night of the season. And look, I think on their night, anybody can beat anybody in the division, and it's not really a big shock anymore. But we're just, like you said a couple of weeks ago, if you had said, we'd be picking up 6 points, although even in Oriel Park, 6 points in the position we are in, you'd be biting your hand off going to Derry, just 3 points behind them now. So. It's a difficult game to look towards, but look, it's probably a free shot for us. Nobody's expecting us to go up there and get anything at all. So look, some of the lads are only after playing 30 minutes. Hubin only played 30 minutes tonight. He's obviously going to come back in, and you'll have a few others. I'm sure Tulloch, after getting 2 goals in 2 games now, is relishing the prospect of going up against one of the fancy teams in the league and really making a name for himself.
Absolutely. He looks to be an absolutely real fine and a quality player. I'm not too sure what there's a lot of kind of discussions over the length of his current loan contract, whether he's here just till June, or that rather he's here till the end of the season. We're not too sure yet, but the only thing I can say is that his stock and his value is going to go through the roof if he keeps performing the way he is. He looks to be a real good player. He's tricky. He's very hard. There was just before the end of the first half, he somehow found that little inch of space, and he was able to get a shot off, which Ciaran saved. Like, that's kind of the little difference in quality that you have between a very good, a good player and a great player. And like, he's just one of those players. But I think you're right, though. He's going to go up to the Brandywell, and a hostile atmosphere. It's a great, but he's going to be playing against a really good quality team with the likes, as we all know, Patrick McElhenney, Michael Duffy, just to name two. And then you're talking about, McJanet and the rest of them. Like, he's going to relish playing against a team of such good footballing technical quality, because he's going to be able to match like for like. And I think that'll suit him. And I think it'll also suit the likes of Holborn and things like that, because he's going to be able to have his ongoing battle with Mark Connolly, which is always great. Like, last year, the two of them had a real ding-dong in Oriel Park. It was brilliant. Like, but that shows you, though, like, Dundalk last year under Stephen, we got some big results, and it wouldn't shock me if they get another one. It really wouldn't.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were drawing 1-1, and he's in tight spaces, Tulloch, and he's demanding the ball, and he wants it the whole time. And look, he's probably brimming with confidence getting the start he's got, but it will be a test up there for him against Dunwigan and the likes of them boys. So but look, it's one that I'm sure he's really looking forward to. It'll be interesting to see now what sort of team Stevie goes with, and I suppose a lot boils down to who's available now at this stage.
Yeah, well, you're just kind of hoping that if there's discussions about this or talk about this virus, like that, it hasn't kind of gone through the whole team, that maybe it's hit 3 or 4 and they'll recover in time, and they're given the adequate time to kind of recover. But you'd be kind of hoping the fact that Louis Ainsley might be able to come back in, and then obviously, as you said, Patrick Hoban's only had 25 to 30 minutes. He got was running with his legs and stuff like that, so he'd be absolutely fine. But everybody be chomping at the bit now that they've gotten the 2 wins, and it looks like they've completely shaken off the Bohemians' defeat, and they'll be looking to really take on what potentially, by the way things are going, Derry look like they could be one of the top 2 teams vying for the title this year. And it's eyeing up like a really interesting title race, because Shamrock Rovers drawing the same. They haven't had the best of starts. I actually asked the question this evening, and I don't know if I'm probably going to get shot in the neck from a couple of Rovers fans, but could it be possibly a situation that they're feeling a little bit of a hangover from last year's European conquest, that constant traveling and playing games and, just grinding out results before the end of the season? Are they carrying the knocks? Is there that fatigue that players experience, for having such a short kind of end of season? Is it very hard after playing such a high intensity for so long to kind of build yourself back up again for a new season? Are they just a wee bit of a slow burner at the moment? So that's something to kind of be. It's an interesting kind of subplot to this league season. But Derry just seem to be flying altogether, and it could turn out to be just a complete classic battle between the two of them.
Yeah. Look, they've got the upper hand after beating them already. So look, I'd say Derry said he'd be looking to go one better after finishing joint second last year. With our good selves, and obviously we're going to be. Hopefully, we'll be involved as well. Hopefully, we can hang on to the coattails, and then just look. You never know. A lot of people writing us off at relegation candidates after the first 2 games. So
listen, Dundalk have never had a strong start to a season. Like, there's always been kind of a couple of odd results in the first couple of games, and people have swatted away. Sure, we have to remember the year we won our first league title under Stephen Kenny in 2014. We got absolutely spanked up in United Park 4-1. Like, we played really well, but still got hammered. And Sean Gannon, I think somebody described him like Bambi on ice that night, and he turned out to be one of our best players like that season. So I mean, I think there can be overreactions and knee jerks, but I think people are willing to give Stephen time because he has waited patiently in the transfer market. He didn't go for the maybe a marquee signing in the league. I don't think there was one. I know for a long time there's been kind of, good players have just swapped between kind of top 3, top 4 sides. That doesn't seem to be happening at the moment. There seems to be kind of a delve into the market's a little bit deeper than just Ireland at the moment. And you can see that with Dundalk, you can see that with Rovers. Derry have explored the UK and the European market as well. So, I mean, and Sligo as well have signed kind of internationally as well. So it's this kind of thing now that we're adding different players from different countries, which is better for the league. But it just shows you that maybe, I'm not saying the quality isn't in the league anymore. What I'm trying to say is that if you're looking for that little bit of extra spark, you have to look elsewhere.
Yeah, I think that it's the net sort of been widened a wee bit. Whereas, years ago it would have been exotic to bring someone in from outside of the league. But look, some of the best young talents, like Kenny was a master at, spotting these players from a couple of the seasons back, bringing them in for a season, and then did really start rolling when they got used to Dundalk's play. But a lot of them players, the likes of Dawson, Devoy, and different things like that, like they've gone to the UK and obviously tested their feet in there. But look, I suppose that's a wider discussion for another day. Obviously there was a bit of a incident at the end of the match. Did you have a bird's eye view, and what can you tell us? Because when I was in the town end, I was trying to. I don't know why, I just seen Robbie Benson running towards the centre circle where Elliot was sort of panned out, nearly passed out with exhaustion, I'd imagine. But I seen him running towards it, heard a bit of noise, and then seen Benson doing the U-turn and darting for the bench. And I was thinking, what's going on here? And I looked up and I stood up on one of the seats, and there was about 40 people just in a big scrum. So can you shed any light on
it? I'd love to pull the Arsene Wenger line and say I didn't see it, but the fact is I did. I was just about to file my final report. I looked up and all I saw was just the two benches had converged. It seems that either words were spoken or something was said between the two benches, and somebody took exception to it. The one thing that I did notice was that, unlike previous, look, Stefan, you've been involved in football. I'm involved in sport as well. These things are, I wouldn't say they're an uncommon occurrence, but they do happen. But it usually disperses kind of fairly quickly. Things are said for about 2 to 3 minutes and you move on. This seemed to go on for a little bit more longer than usual. It seems that there was a very kind of aggressive point from both sides. Now, I don't know who I can say who were the aggressors in this, because I don't want to get myself sued. But at the same time, it's very evident that one bench was more aggrieved than the other, and it resulted in this kind of very aggressive reaction is the best way to describe it. Dundalk stewards had to get involved to try and split the two groups. I know that certain players tried to row in to try and kind of break things up, and ended up being kind of pushed back out again. It seems that it was the two technical teams, or dare I say, one kind of very heavy-handed from one technical team. It's an odd thing to see at this stage, at this stage of the season. Now, look, there wasn't really anything in the game to turn around and say that would warrant this kind of massive reaction. I could understand if there was a situation that there was a penalty call in the 96th minute, the referee waved it away. I think Damien Duff has already commented, according to Between the Stripes, that he wasn't happy with the goal being disallowed. Look, he was offside. Referee had his flag up. He was offside. He was behind the player when the pass was made. I had a very good view of it. So that's the end of the discussion from my viewpoint and my interpretation of it. But for that disallowed goal to warrant that kind of reaction is simply it's like how you say the punishment doesn't fit the crime. Well, the reaction doesn't fit the incident. as far as I'm concerned. So I'm a little bit perturbed at how something like that resulted in such a big reaction. But that's down to management as well, and management have to control those situations. So depending on the referee's report, what's going to be said in relation to it, it will have a very big. But there could be implications on both sides for this, and I think both clubs kind of have to come out and realize. And now, the only thing I'm going to say, which I thought was absolutely brilliant, was Greg Sloggett's reaction. He kind of diffused the situation nearly by absolutely going buck mad in front of the stand, and the whole attention was taken away. I just see Frank Carlin. Duff came over to the Dundalk FC dugout and confronted some of the Dundalk FC players. It kicked off, and then he tried to slip down the dugout, but was stopped by the referee. It kicked off again down the tunnel. Now, that's Frank's interpretation and viewpoint. I could only see at the time that I kind of darted up my eyes. All I can see was the Dundalk FC. The two benches really kind of converged. So I kind of missed the initial kind of, how would you say, spark of the match, so to speak. So I can't. So thanks for Frank for that. But the one thing I will say was that I had finished my video report with finalwhistle.ie this evening, and there was still kind of stewards floating around, and there still seemed to be kind of very aggressive discussions. You're talking 10, 15 minutes post-match. At that stage, you should be moved on at that stage. So I don't know.
Just on that one, I think Duff sort of creates a narrative where, everyone's against him, and, they don't get these decisions. And look, maybe that works for team that he's trying to motivate teams and different things like that. And, he's probably trying to create a siege mentality where his players think, and look, I've been involved in teams like that, and, it sort of gives you another extra percentage that you mightn't have thought you had at times. So look, if he goes along with that, it's creating controversy every single match. And look, maybe it's good for the league, and he's a massive name, and what he's done in football and scoring at World Cups, like, a couple of us will whisker away from doing that as well. But but look, it's another talking point, and maybe he's trying to deflect away from the result as well, from his team, take the heat off his team. You don't know what he's thinking, but
it is kind of a Mourinho. Mourinho was a master at that, where he would kind of create an aura around him and just let his players play. But Damien is a fantastic personality to have. That you need people like that. I'm going to be quite honest with you. I'd love to see Roddy Collins in one dugout and Damien Duff in the other. I say that would be an absolute brilliant ding dong. But look, I think while it's all brilliant and we all love it, did tonight warrant that? I don't think so.
Yeah.
And I think I don't think the reaction was necessarily needed. But if I was the Shelbourne board of management, they'd have to look very, very closely at that incident and see that, and hopefully that kind of make sure that kind of doesn't happen again. Because the problem is, you talk about reputations and things like that. You want to have a reputation of being tough on the pitch to beat. You don't want a reputation for being sore losers off it, because that's the way it could come across.
Yeah, and look, a few people have said to me that it might have been sparked by one of the Dundalk subs at the end of the game. And look, it could be hearsay as well, and it could be just winding Duff up to get his reaction as well. And look, like we said, we haven't really seen it, to be honest. So look,
but Damien Duff, in fairness, has been a professional footballer in the Premier League. Like, he should know better. Like, that's another thing. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think you worded it well when you said he should know better. So look, I think we've taken enough time talking about Duff anyway. So just looking a small bit ahead towards the season, I suppose, Ciaran. Are you sort of happy with the place we've got to now? Probably would have been a different conversation after the Bulls game if we had brought you in then. But are you happy with how it's gone so far?
I wasn't necessary. I think I try not to be too harsh. I'm a ray of positivity. I'm only joking. No, look, I suppose the one thing, like, I always kind of knew, because of the fact that the signings are coming in late, that we were necessarily, they didn't get a full preseason under each other, and I always kind of thought that these games are only get better. I felt that, I remember listening to you on the podcast for the UCD game, and I wasn't at the game itself. I was watching on LOI TV, and it was very, like, it's a very difficult game. When when you hear the words UCD, you kind of go, oh, it's not something to get yourself. You've spoken about it. Like, it's not hard to get yourself kind of motivated for that. But the Bulls game was I think it was a bit of a culture shock, because Bows have really created something special up in Dalymount. You're talking 5,500 people. I think there was 550 from Dundalk. They've completely changed the structure of how their stadium is now. You've got the Jody stand, which is completely full right in front of you, and you've got a singing section behind, and then you've got the part behind the goal, the old kind of away end for Dundalk fans or whatever opposition. They've really made something of the place, and it's going to become a very, very difficult place to go to. Also, Dundalk have played really well against Bows under Keith Long, and I think Declan Devine has brought a bit of steel and a bit of grit to them. And I think it was a bit of a culture shock for them. I don't think they were kind of up and running as much as they would have wanted to have been. And then Bows just came, and they had a great preseason underneath them. They've got a very settled side. Declan Devine's a great man motivator, and they were just blown away. And you kind of thought that we're going to really, really struggle. And I was very, very fearful going into the Pats match, because I thought on paper Pats have really signed well. They've recruited very, very well. Tim Clancy's a good, dynamic, good young manager. And Dundalk just blew them apart. And the reason being was that they probably had 3 weeks then under their belts where they were kind of working together and working under what Stephen wanted and his philosophy. And I think it just clicked. And I think the Pats game showed what they can do when they're expressive. And I think tonight showed of what they can do when their backs are against the wall. And that's something that this Dundalk side has always kind of been very traditional about, is that you can grind out when you need to grind it out, and you can be flamboyant when you need to be. And it's about, being those kind of sides, and they can be diversive in that regard. I'm very, very happy. But as is always the case, I don't kind of make a big judgment until a bit after 10 games. But I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to be like against Derry City, who are the big side to look out for this season. Shamrock Rovers, and dare I say it, their old rivals Cork City, because they love a trip to Turner's Cross. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see how they get on against those kind of sides for different reasons. And we'll see how we get on. I'm thinking this season is not going to be as bad or as fearful as what people would have initially thought.
Yeah, and look, we'll have to get you in after the 11th game then to get your proper prediction. Just look, we won't hang about too long. It's about Tuesday now at this stage, so
I like school in the morning, so
I like school in the morning and walk. But look, you're just going on tonight, who sort of stood out for you, and then just give us your man of the match then as well, if you have one.
Greg Salga got man of the match. I thought he put in an absolutely excellent performance. I think he's really grown into. He spoke in the press before the season started that he's become kind of one of the leaders in the side. I think that's very evident. I think he's really turned into an unbelievable player for Dundalk, and I think every year he's just getting better and better. But I think Stephen's getting the best out of him, and I think that's been really, really important for his development. Ryan Tulloch, look, he's going to be a star, and I think that's something that I think the big difference between maybe himself and Stephen Bradley from last year, I think he's just a lot trickier to deal with, and I think he's a little bit bigger and more aggressive, which will really help Dundalk. I thought Andy Boyle was superb this evening. I think Andy Boyle's come back in this season, and he's just looked, he's looking like he's really back to, the kind of the Andy Boyle that we became to love and know over the past couple of years. I think the knee operation that he had last season kind of stunted his kind of development. Not development, but he didn't get a proper preseason under him, so he was a little bit behind the whole time. I think he's had a proper preseason underneath him. I think he's hitting that bell curve when it comes to your peak years. He's at 32 tomorrow, but I think he's just really, really grown in stature once again. He's really shown his worth. And yeah, I think Andy Boyle was my man of the match this evening. I thought he was excellent.
Yeah, look, I think the three lads you mentioned probably were they were definitely in my top three as well. I probably had them in different order. I thought with Tulloch getting the goal and just how he was playing, with the man in the ball, getting us forward. He was always positive. He was playing 1-2s round people, and just even his turn at the end and creating chances out of nothing sort of just had him ahead. Look, Greg Sloggett again. You talk about consistent players, but now he's, usually consistent players, you say, he's a 7 out of 10 every week, and he never drops below that. He might be the best player on the pitch, but he's actually probably overperforming on that. Not overperforming, but he's performing above that every single week now. So, like you said, he's one of the leaders of the team, and like Boyle, I'm no doubt they would have got everyone together, and Hooben as well, and got the boys together and just down to business. And once the first win came, and it was a massive win against Pats, I'm sure they drove on. Boyle getting his goal as well. Was a fantastic corner from Mali, straight in the danger zone, and there must have been about 18 players in the 6-yard box. But it's obviously something they've worked on. It was probably the first good corner they put in, and Boyle got his head on it. But yeah, look, it was probably a toss of a coin, a 3-sided coin between them. I would have went with Tulloch, but you've gone Boyle, Tulloch, so I don't know.
It seems to be very much a split in the comments this evening between the three of them. A lot of people were very impressed with Boyle and with Tulloch and also with Greg. So it's one of those nights.
Yeah, hang on. I'm just gonna go through it.
But it shows though that, like, even with Friday night, just to kind of you had five different scores there on Friday night. And there again, we have Andy Boyle coming in with another goal. So that was kind of always a staple. And I'm not going to harp on about the Stephen Kenny, but that was one of those things that the goals could come from anywhere. That kind of seems to be now creeping into the Dundalk side as well, that, goals are going to be coming from different players, which means that there's not that kind of predictability that they're just relying on Hooben or Bradley or one or another, So that in itself is going to be a different dynamic to this Dundalk side this year, I think.
Yeah, and look, it'll be hot. I'm not going to go with Boyle, or I'm not going to go with Tulloch, because the two of us picked him. So I'll have to go with someone that's picked Sloggett, Johnny Lynch. Yeah, there you go. Another and look, you can't really argue with that either. All action display. He drove forward. He was closing people down. He was nicking balls. He was passing. He was tackling. He headed one clear in the dying seconds to make sure we got the 3 points over the line. So, Johnny, you've just secured yourself a pizza at Tony's Pizzeria. Well done,
Johnny. Well done.
Good pick. Yeah, and look, it's good that we've a couple of people to mention for man the match. Sometimes you can come on and you're struggling to get on. So, yeah, look, thanks very much for coming on, Ciaran. It was a pleasure as always chatting to you.
Okay.
You got the bird's eye view of the match, and obviously you've done your report, so we'll be reading it to make sure it matches up with what you said tonight.
Absolutely, it's always full of praise anyway. So, there's it's never usually I've been with Final Whistle for 2 seasons now. The first season was quite difficult because it was in the middle of the whole transition period between Pete 6 1.0 and Pete 6 2.0. So things have been a lot easier to write over the past couple of months.
Yeah. Look, it's nice to Well, I suppose you'd probably a bit of talking to do off the pitch as well, but it's nice to be talking about the football side of things as well. So no, fair play. It's great to get someone with your knowledge on as well.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, no worries. We're gonna wrap it up. Do you want to give us the final word before you're off it?
Oh God. No Tulloch, no party. That's this year.